The West African meningitis belt, spanning horizontally from Senegal to Ethiopia, is a large region in sub-Saharan Africa that suffers from frequent bacterial meningitis outbreaks. Surges of the disease occur almost yearly, with the beginning of the dry season in early December, and large-scale epidemics typically reoccur every 10 years. In late 2009, one of these deadly epidemics took place, devastating Burkina Faso, Mali, Nigeria, and Niger. In order to fully understand the gravity and effects of this epidemic, we must first discuss the history of the disease itself. We now know that bacterial meningitis is a serious and deadly medical crisis. Bacteria invades the brain, causing inflammation of the meninges, which surround and protect the brain and spinal cord. Symptoms typically include fever, headache, confusion, and sensitivity to light. Thorough understanding of the cause and progression of the disease took many years, and certain aspects of its existence still remain a mystery today. Descriptions of symptoms resembling meningitis can be found in Hippocratic writings and have remained a subject of interest for physicians and scientists over the centuries. The high fevers associated with meningitis led Hippocrates to believe that the disease was caused by an excess of blood, and treatments consisted of attempts to balance the humors. In the 17th and 18th centuries, meningitis was referred to by many names, such as frenzy, dropsy of the brain, and brain fever. While we now know this disease encompasses a multitude of symptoms, physicians at this time attributed headache, fever, and in severe cases delirium to the disease. Brain fever affected young children and infants, with severe cases causing imminent death within a matter of hours to days. Autopsies of the deceased show evidence of increased fluid within the brain, but the physiology and cause of the disease was still elusive. However, in 1828, John Abercrombie wrote the first textbook of neuropathology, including and renaming the disease as meningitis due to the trademark inflammation of meninges discovered during these autopsies. In 1885, the first examination of cerebrospinal fluid surrounding the brain and spinal cord was performed by James Corning. This study contributed to the invention of the lumbar puncture. With this procedure, a definitive diagnosis could be made that was not based upon clinical examination or autopsy reports following death. Analysis of CSF gave confirmation that the disease was caused by bacteria. Many different types can cause bacterial meningitis, the most common being N. meningitis. Clinical signs and symptoms had been described sufficiently throughout the 1800s, and in the mid to late 19th century, 2 clinical observations were discovered that are still used today as hallmark warnings of the disease. These are called Kernig's and Brudzinski's signs. Treatment of bacterial meningitis has changed significantly with further scientific discoveries and research. Bloodletting was originally utilized to decrease excess heat and blood within the body. Topical medications and diuretics were later included within the treatment plan, and these strategies remained until the early 19th century. Serum therapy was discovered to be the first effective treatment. This consisted of extracting serum from horses that had been introduced to the bacteria and then injecting it into patients. Finally, the discovery of sulfonamides and other antibiotics led to the initiation of antibiotic therapy to treat bacterial meningitis. These methods are still used today. Research on vaccinations began in the 19th century. Many field trials and studies led to the FDA approval of the Hib vaccine, which is included in the standard immunizations currently given to children. However, the invention of vaccinations shifted the age of patients to include both children and young adults. Because bacterial meningitis outbreaks are caused by different strains of bacteria, an effective vaccine is difficult to procure and utilize during epidemics, such as the 2009-2010 West African meningitis epidemic. Given all of this knowledge of bacterial meningitis, how did the 2009-2010 West African epidemic become so detrimental? The specific cause of consistent outbreaks in the African meningitis belt still remain a mystery, which brings incredible fear and uncertainty to the population. Studies have suggested many possible reasons for the outbreaks, including damaged nasal passages from dry air, but a definitive reason has yet to be pinpointed. The epidemic began earlier than usual in 2009, which limited the preparation these countries undergo every year. Bacterial meningitis infected 86,714 people within 2009 alone, and as a result, approximately 4,000 people died. Global stockpiles of vaccines were depleted in an attempt to combat increasing infection rates, and country leaders were given limited instructions on how to disperse the tools they were given. Even with sufficient supplies, patients were far away from any source of medical care, causing a delay in treatment or stopping it completely. It was discovered that the epidemic was caused by N. meningitis, and as a result, a massive campaign began to create a vaccine specifically formulated for the African meningitis belt. Once the vaccine was complete, the World Health Organization developed immunization guidelines to ensure that members of the population ranging from 1 to 29 years old were vaccinated. The vaccine rolled out in 2010 and was extremely successful. Unfortunately, yearly outbreaks still occur because of varying bacterial strains. While many monumental discoveries have been made in relation to the etiology and treatment of bacterial meningitis, research is still desperately needed in order to understand the repetitive nature of the outbreaks in the African meningitis belt. Furthermore, the differing bacteria involved further complicates treatment plans and vaccination effectiveness. As we have seen, West Africa felt the full force of these downfalls within 2009 and 2010, and the society remains in fear of the future to come. However, researchers and citizens alike remain hopeful for a solution to end these recurring epidemics.